Hey everybody in YouTube land, how's everybody today? Today I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite albums from a little known group called Dredge and their album El Cielo.
Fading color, buzzing white noise. Sounds like 100 bees. I too once thought the radio played. Let's act like children while we sleep paralyzed. I too once thought the radio played. Let's act like children while we sleep paralyzed.
To start off, I want to say this group really introduces its listeners to fresh and unforgettable melodies in every track on this album. This is a loose concept album based on the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, and indeed, in lieu of the liner notes, there are actual letters from sufferers of the condition. Throughout the album, we hear spoken words, and these are actual excerpts from the liner notes. So it's got a really cool tie-in with that. Be forewarned though, this album is highly recommended in my opinion. The melodies, the hooks, and the instrumentation on it are they will resonate in just one listen. It's that catchy of an album, and I can guarantee you after the first time you won't want to put it down and you'll want to keep listening to it. Now, throughout the album, there's lots of little instrumental passages called brushstrokes. You cannot pronounce the first one. It is simply titled Brushstroke slash DCBT FOABAAPOSBA, which is an acronym for Dreams Caused by a Flight of a Bumblebee Around a Pomegranate 1 second before awakening, which is in a reference to a Salvador Dali painting. There's not much to it. It's just a little blurb of strange synthetic sounds, and it sounds like somebody's actually taking a brush and you can hear the brush strokes. It's a neat beginning to an album, but the album really gets into it with the next song called Same Old Road. And this is a very straightforward bass and drum song, and from the first time I heard it, the clean guitar introduces itself alongside the soft male voice, and I felt for a minute that I was going to be in for a real treat. And while I wasn't mistaken, this song to this day, after it being for quite a while now, let's just see here. (2003), so yeah, even back then, this song still resonates with me and sounds as fresh as it ever did. Alright, following The Same Old Road is a song called Sansan. And this is a very exquisite, very delicate, but yet at the same time a very powerful song. The chorus is perhaps the most memorable on the album, which is a lot having just listened to Same Old Road, which, you know, some may argue it may be more catchier, but I'm going to give it to Sansan but that's just a personal feeling of mine. But check them out. They're both very great, very great. They're both very good songs. The music isn't quite rock, but it does have some atmospheric, beautiful jazzy moments, and is a combination of a bunch of things. It's a really hard song to nail down in a specific genre, but that's why it works, and that's why Dredge, at the time of this album was released, were kings at doing stuff like that. They kind of made any style their own. Now we have another brush stroke, and this one is called New Heart Shadow. Sorry. It's very short, instrumental. It kind of reminds me a little bit of something that you might hear. Maybe the Red Hot Chili Peppers comes to mind, something from the Californication time period. You have to hear it to understand what I'm saying. I'm not comparing it to the Chili Peppers by any means, because Dredge is 10 times the band they are in my opinion, but for some reason it has always reminded me of that. Alright, now following that brushstroke, the New Heart Shadow one, we have a song called Triangle. And this song starts with a distant drum and has some very soft synthesizers that begin this very, very excellent song, in my opinion. The lyrics are very, very powerful. You know, we have observations rather about life's little ironies. You know, the leader, the singer references such things as watch it explode. Well, it's not impossible for flowers to bloom and grow next to graves, and babies are born in the same buildings where people go to die. Stuff like that. It's a very visually prominent number on the album. Musically, it's got a couple of themes that make up an appearance here and there throughout the album, which is a great trick. I love bands that have reoccurring themes in their songs. Not necessarily. It's a progressive element I like. We'll call it that, because you don't hear a lot of popular musics, but you'll hear this theme in this song. You'll pick it up later on in another song a little bit. That to me is, I don't know, I just love it. I can't explain why, but I just think that's a great thing. All right, next song is a song called Sorry But It's Over. And this is an acoustic and clean guitar playing on an imaginative riff under somewhat somber vocals. The heavier chorus retains soft vocals and haunting sounds are incorporated into the mix. This is a terrific piece that rivals similar songs from bands like Porcupine Tree. You appreciate them more for stuff like this because they weren't really labeled as a prog group. Dredge were. They were more of a, they were on Interscope at the time. So they're kind of, labeled into that whole indie new metal scene, which they're not. They're definitely not. They're definitely prog. And that song just is a prime example of what I mean. Following that is a song called Convalescent, and it is another very progressive but pop oriented home run of a song. It blends both a very catchy series of verses and a chorus with a very gritty guitar and very, very clever instrumentation that you don't hear in, general pop music. The ending is almost self-depressingly funny. You have to hear it to understand what I mean. I'm going to leave it at that, and you guys just listen to the end of it and you'll know what I mean. Follow that, we have another little short instrumental brushstroke, as I call it. This one is called A Walk in the Park. And this one is a very delicate interlude and is played on the piano and strings. And I can't explain it by otherly just saying that it's gorgeous, because that's exactly what it is. Next is a song called 18 People Living in Harmony. And this song has got a grating guitar sound that really rubs against a very gentle instrumentation from the rest of the group. And during the song, there are some very intense, soft passages in the middle which bring back the scratching from the first brushstrokes. And this is another song that I believe is very proggy in its thinking, and it's not one of the more memorable songs on the album, to me anyways, but it is still a fine, fine song, and it fits in with the rest of them seamlessly. Alright, coming up next is probably my personal favorite on the album, and it's a song called Scissor Lock. And again, we hear the lead singer, whose name is Galvin. He offers some very elegant, very gentle melodies, and as time it's over, a very soft yet upbeat music as well. And you hear a lot of those voices reading the letters as we spoke to in the intro. Alright, now we have another brushstroke, and this one is called Reprise, and it is basic beat. It's got a basic beat adorned by the keyboard from the song Same Old Road, which the second half of this little reprise has slide guitar and acoustic guitars, and in a way is very reminiscent of the section of Soon from Yes is the Gates of Delirium. That's really what it reminds me of, and I hope you would pick that up too. Alright guys, coming up after Brushstroke Reprise is a song called Of the Room, and this picks up from the same music motif as the song Triangle, which we talked about earlier. Vocally, this is a very powerful track as well, and features some very, very lovely ornamental guitar. Following of The Room, we have another brushstroke, and this one is called An Elephant in the Delta Waves. And as expected, there is a Middle Eastern sound to this interlude. There's female vocals here, and it's nothing less than breathtaking. It is actually, for an instrumental, a very, very emotional track. It's very well done. Coming up, the next song on the album is called Woe Is Me. Peaceful guitars make up the verses, and the choruses are very typically heavy rock in this song. You've got a very jazzy selection at the end, and there's a delicately soothing saxophone and a soothing piano in it as well. You know, as a side little note here, at the end of Woe Is Me, you can hear a radio announcer at the end talk about the piece being inspired by lucid dreaming. He says, the clarity of consciousness rather than the vividness of a dream. And this is a very important aspect given the concept of this album, and I'm glad they kind of stuck that in, because it kind of wraps everything up and kind of puts a bookend to it, so to speak. And of course, the last song on the album is a track called The Canyon Behind Her. And this final track is a stellar one indeed. It's got some very glorious vocals and a very vigorous instrumentation throughout. And it's kind of capped off with some very beautiful chorale singing. And that concludes the album. It ends on a real beautiful, positive note. I can't recommend this album enough. It's not probably on a lot of people's radars just because of who Dredge is. They haven't released any new material, kind of on hiatus, since I want to say about 2014, maybe 2013 in there somewhere. So I do hope they do get back together and start making some good music. Well, it's always been good. I don't have a problem with any of their stuff. It's always different too, so that's another aspect I like about them. But if you see this one out in the wild or wherever, or just intrigued, download it and go on YouTube, check them out. And this is the front cover. And that's the back cover. Not much for artwork. I'm not going to show you the liner notes because it's all just handwritten letters and stuff, so it's not something that is exactly fun to look at. It's a kind of a neat read, but I'll leave that to you to buy the album to read it. And I'm going to rate this album an A-, and I think it should be a part of everybody's collection. I do believe this album is definitely essential and should be in your collection. So if you find it, pick it up, and we'll see each other soon, and take care of each other as always. Good night.